Hey, you guys. So let's talk about sleep life. So, of the number of the multitude of behavioral things that you can modify to improve your health, sleep has got to be one of the most important. It's one of the things you have the most control over that gives you the one of the biggest bangs for your buck. And so, when we talk about optimizing our sleep for our health, hormones, and longevity, it's really important, number one, that you understand the power of sleep. And number two, you actually have the tools and the skills to know how to optimize your sleep. And so we're going to talk about that in this video and several others. So I want to start off by talking about the science of sleep. I'm going to try not to bore you with the details, but I do think it's important that you understand why we sleep and how it functions and the impact that optimizing your sleep can have on your body and your biochemistry. So, why is sleep so important? Well, number one is that many of the symptoms that people come to see doctors about um, can be related to sleep. And what that means is, for example, people come to me with fatigue, problems losing weight, mental brain fog, excessive hunger and cravings, a, t- a medical conditions, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. All of these things are affected by our sleep, and to some degree can be caused by lack of sleep. And so before we can get into, do we need to test you for hormones, do we need to put you on a medication to help you with your symptoms, really the first thing we need to do is optimize your sleep and then see what symptoms are left over after. So when we talk about the impact of sleep on the way that we feel and and our disease state and our health state, we look at sleep as increasing our energy, increasing mental focus and our ability to learn, improving our mood and our stress resiliency. Sleep absolutely affects our hunger and cravings. We're going to talk about that. It affects all of our hormones, our metabolic hormones, our stress hormones, our sex hormones. It affects our immune system and prevents us from getting sick. It also affects our microbiome, which we know is related to all parts of our health. And so sleep functions to affect so many things that if you can impact sleep, you can really have a good impact, a broad impact on all of these other issues. So, a little bit about the stages of sleep. The only reason I'm even bringing this up is because I want you to understand how sleep works and what happens when sleep goes awry. So, there are two main phases. There's non-REM sleep and REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement. And the non-REM sleep is broken up into two stages, light sleep and deep sleep. And each of those have two phases, which are determined by your brain waves and the actual effect that those stages have on your health. But one of the things that's really important to know here is that your brain is very active when you're sleeping. It seems like we just shut down, but honestly, this is the time when our mind and our brain is doing a ton of things. And so when you think about sleep deprivation, if you're not getting enough sleep, your brain is not able to do what it needs to do to get to improve your health because it doesn't have enough time to do all of those things. So, we're going to actually break this down and look at the time and the impact that each of these stages have on your overall sleep. Now, REM sleep is also known as like sort of your dreaming stage. So, this is where we get into our dreams, and all of the benefits of REM sleep will be described moving forward. So the and, for non-REM sleep, you have your light sleep, which promotes mental health and physical restoration. It guides you into your deeper sleep zones, and then when you are in deep sleep, this is area where focus is on restoring the body. So it's all about muscle repair, muscle growth. This is the opportunity when your brain actually detoxes from toxins. So the brain flushes out extra waste that doesn't need to be there anymore. And it's a time when you are really in a deep sleep, why it's called the deep sleep stage. So if you are woken up from this stage, it can be very disruptive. You wake up and you feel really groggy and disoriented. Now, with REM sleep, this is your dreaming phase. This phase is really about re-energizing the mind. It's about solidifying memories and things that you've learned. It helps with creativity, problem solving, and mood. So if you are deficient in your REM sleep, it can affect all of these areas. So for people who are like, oh, my memory is failing, or you have something on your mind, and you know how we say you kind of sleep on it, and then wake up in the morning, you've solved the problem because you've gotten enough REM sleep. So REM sleep is extremely important. What's important also to know is that no one stage is more important than the other. You need all of them. So let's talk about a little bit deeper about these phases and how they might be affected um, when you get optimal sleep versus non-optimal sleep. So this image here, these two images are actually my sleep. So I record my sleep with a device I'll talk about later. And what it does is it actually tells me how long I'm in each phase of sleep or each stage of sleep. And so just to orient you, the white is when you're awake. The next level of blue, lighter blue, is our REM sleep or our dream sleep, and then the darker blue is light sleep, and then the darkest blue is deep sleep. And I want you to notice a couple of things. The first thing is that you cycle through the stages of sleep. Um, every 90 minutes, approximately every 90 minutes. Usually you will cycle through each phase 4 or 5 times in the night if you are sleeping the full time. Now you can see here I slept for a total of 8 hours and 43 minutes. Um, it totaled in 9 hours and 30 minutes, but that's because that's including my waking times. As you can see, I woke up several times during the night. All of us do, but we probably don't remember those times. You can see these are very short awakenings. I don't even remember waking up, being awake during those times, but your body is cycling through all of these phases. The other thing I want you to notice is that your deep sleep seems to occur earlier in the night, and your REM sleep is predominant in the later part of the night. And this is really important when we talk about the time we go to sleep and the time we wake up, because as you'll see in the next few slides, if you go to sleep too late, it will actually cut down on your deep sleep. And if you wake up too early, it will cut down on your REM sleep. Um, so we really want to aim for about an hour and a half of deep sleep, or hour and a half of light sleep. As you can see here, it was a great night for REM sleep. I had 2 hours and 40 minutes of REM sleep. My deep sleep wasn't as great, but it was over an hour, so that is positive. But if we had gotten to like an hour and a half, that would have even been better. And then there are certain things that affect deep sleep and REM sleep, as we'll talk about later. And so the reason I track my sleep is not just so that I have that information, it's really so that I can see what interventions have the greatest impact on my sleep. So if I take magnesium, sometimes that improves my deep sleep. If I drink alcohol, that will affect my deep sleep and my REM sleep. And so I can see the impact of my choices have on my sleep and make adjustments as accordingly. So this is just an example of a good night's sleep. Now let's look at what happens when I don't have such a great night of sleep. So this is also my data. I slept for 3 hours and 30 minutes in the night. You can see that is obviously not that great. You can see that my deep sleep is less, and my REM sleep is less. And if you look over here, I got about 1 hour of deep sleep, and I got about 55 minutes of REM sleep. So both of those were cut short. There just wasn't enough time in my sleep to be able to compensate. So this obviously I went to bed around 1:51 in the morning. So I went to bed later than I should have. And then I also woke up really early because I've got to take my kids to school. So um, this is just an example of how you can affect your sleep and cause sleep deprivation. Now, this could have been because of insomnia, right? Like I just couldn't get to sleep, and I can tell you just because these are my numbers, that's what this is. Oftentimes I'll lay in bed for several hours, and never go to sleep. So for me, this is insomnia, but this also could be a choice, right? So many people choose to stay up really late despite knowing they have to get up early in the morning. And that's this sort of self imposed sleep deprivation. Um, so again, this is what falling asleep, having trouble falling asleep looks like. Let's look at what happens when I have trouble staying asleep. So in this example, I did go to sleep at a fairly good time, 10:44. Again, that's a little later than I'd like to. But then I had several wakings in the middle of the night, some of them longer than the previous. And then also you can see how my deep sleep is scattered, because what happened here is that I woke up so early that I wasn't even able to really get to the good REM sleep, right? So I cut my REM sleep super short, only 34 minutes of uh, REM sleep. If I had slept longer, because REM sleep predominates the second half, I would have gotten more REM sleep and the benefits of that, the creativity, the mood issue. So I can anticipate that this day I am going to be a moody individual and probably not on my A game. My deep sleep was pretty okay, but that's because I went to bed at a reasonable time and my body thought, oh, I'm going to get a full 8 hours of sleep. That's what it thought when I went to bed. But then I disrupted it by waking up super early. So again, this is just an example of trouble staying asleep and the impact that it has on those vital stages of sleep. So, what happens when you are not getting enough sleep? And what is defined as not getting enough sleep? Anything less than 6 hours, honestly. I mean, we really should be aiming for 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. But, if you're consistently getting less than 6 hours, this is going to impact your health in several ways. Number one, it's going to shorten your lifespan. Obviously, that's not something I would know right now, but if I continue to get less than 6 hours of sleep for years on end, it would definitely cut down on my quality of life as well as the length of my life. Increased chronic illnesses, because it affects our heart, it affects our digestion, it affects our musculoskeletal system, it affects our hormones. When these things are out of whack, they lead to disease, right? We talked about acute illness and infection because of our immune system. So it weakens your immune system when you're not getting enough sleep. So you're more prone to getting infections. Um, Fatigue and brain fog, right? It operates on our brain and our nervous systems. And we talked about how light sleep is that sort of restorative sleep. And we talked about how deep sleep clears out waste. And so if you're not doing those things, you can imagine how that affects your brain fog and your energy levels. Weight gain. We're going to talk about the relationship between sleep and weight gain in just a moment. Memory loss or working memory. So many of my patients come and they say, hey, listen, I walk into a room and I just can't remember what I was going in there for, or I was sitting down reading a book and I can't remember what I was reading. And oftentimes that can be the result of not getting enough sleep. Not necessarily your hormones per se. It's just simply if you got better sleep, your working memory would be better. It's not necessarily Alzheimer's. It's just you need more sleep. So also reduce creativity and problem solving. Again, that's by not getting enough REM sleep in the later half of your sleep. And then you also have an enhanced physical signs of aging. So everybody has seen somebody who looks sleep deprived because not sleeping well does not leave you looking restored. So let's talk about some of these drivers of sleep. So, what is the thing that actually stimulates you to go to sleep? Well, one of them is a hormone called melatonin. It rises as the sun goes down and it peaks in the middle of the night and then it comes down so that it's lower by the time it's time for you to wake up. At the same time as another hormone, cortisol, is actually peaking in the morning. So it's this ebb and flow of melatonin and cortisol that actually can stimulate sleep and then stimulate wakefulness. The same thing goes for body temperature. Your body actually has to reduce about a degree um, for you to sleep, and then your body temperature actually goes up, and is that one of the signals that tells your body it is time to wake up. So that fluctuation in body temperature also helps to regulate sleep. And then there's something called sleep pressure. And this is one of the most interesting things to me, because sleep pressure is this idea that the longer you're awake, the more of a particular chemical builds up. That chemical is called adenosine, and it is a breakdown product of one of the energy metabolites that's in your body called ATP. So when ATP breaks down, it produces adenosine, and adenosine, as it rises over the course of you being awake, it causes you to feel sleepy. And so the longer you're up, the higher your adenosine is, and the more pressure you feel to go to sleep. And this is actually quite interesting when we talk about like jet lag, or if you stay up for 48 hours, your adenosine continues to build. And so that pressure, that need to fall asleep, also builds. So you'll notice if you've been up for 24 hours, that, by the end, sorry, if you've been up for like 48 hours, by the end of those 48 hours, you feel like you just cannot stay awake. And that's the adenosine. Now, your sleep cycle or your circadian rhythm keeps going as normal. It's irrespective of your adenosine levels. You're going to continue to feel more sleepy at night and more awake during the day. And so these two they don't affect one another, but they are both contribute to your ability to fall asleep, your ability to stay asleep, and um, are associated with the time of day, the amount of time you've been awake. So super important to understand that these two are big players in your ability to get good sleep. Another thing that affects your sleep is light. And light specifically impacts melatonin levels. And so we know that specifically blue light found in like overhead lights or incandescent lights, or blue lights or LED lights. These that blue light in these light fixtures or light bulbs can actually suppress melatonin. So what does that mean? If you are, you know, living before the advent of the light bulb, your light exposure was dependent upon either the sun, the moon, or candles. But nowadays, we are constantly stimulating our brain with light, superficial light, and that blue light can actually depress our melatonin. And remember, we just learned that melatonin, the rise in melatonin, is the thing that helps us get to sleep. But if we're constantly stimulated with blue light, it depresses the amount of melatonin, um, as up to 80%. So you're no longer producing melatonin at the degree that you need to fall asleep. So can explain why you're having problems going to sleep. So we talk about the impact that lighting can play on your sleep. And so we'll talk about that when we get to some of the tools. So, what are some of the things that inhibit sleep? So, we are the only species who intentionally deprive ourselves of sleep, right? So, as a culture, we don't prioritize sleep, and as a matter of fact, many of us hold it as a badge of honor to not get sleep. I can tell you from firsthand experience in medical school and in residency, you keep people up 24 hours a day and then ask them to provide medical care. It's kind of ridiculous, but that's what we do. And we make those choices to do that. I mean, most animal species, they just go to sleep when it's time to sleep, and they are not going to intentionally stay up longer than they have to. Then we also impact ourselves with a number of stimulants. So coffee, alcohol, certain medications, all can stimulate or keep us awake. And then eating late at night, we'll talk about the impact that that has on our cortisol levels and our melatonin and how that affects our sleep. Stress is a huge impactor on sleep. So when you go to sleep and you have a lot on your mind, I'm sure everybody has experienced that, where it is really hard for you to sleep when you are when your body is under stress. We talked about temperature, and so making sure that your body can actually decrease temperature. So if you're in a hot room, that can impact your sleep. Air quality can impact your breathing, and also can impact your ability to get a good night's sleep. Traveling across time zones obviously can impact you. Noise pollution. So living in a city where there's tons of noise outside of your window, or being in a house where people are loud and the TV is going, all of that can affect. Artificial light, like we talked about, that blue light. Lack of a wind down. This may be um not seem intuitive, but to you, but most people think that you should be able to just get in bed and go to sleep, like a light switch, like turning off a light switch. I'm in bed, go to sleep, body. But our bodies have a hard time making that transition between being highly awake, active, our eyes exposed to bright lights, to go to a phase of where you feel tired and sleepy. So, as anybody who has kids knows, that kids uh, really optimize their sleep when they have a bedtime story or some sort of routine that helps their bodies wind down. And as adults, our need for that does not change either. EMF from Wi-Fi or our cell phones can also affect your ability to sleep for people who are sensitive. Napping for too late in the day or napping for too long can impact your sleep. Pain or illness. So if you've got chronic back pain or if you've got a cold, obviously that can impact your sleep. And then mouth breathing. We'll talk a little bit about that later. So let's talk about some of these stimulants. So specifically caffeine, because it's so prevalent. Caffeine is a drug. It impacts our brain and the way our bodies functions. It impacts our hormones, but it's a drug that is highly acceptable in our society. So not just from coffee, but from sodas to teas, and then also can be found in some medications. But caffeine actually inhibits the adenosine. It so it makes it counters the impact of adenosine on your sleepiness. So we talked about how adenosine, as it rises over the course of the day, causes you to feel sleepy. Well, caffeine binds to those adenosine receptors and it actually inhibits that feeling of sleepiness, which is why it works. But one of the things that is important to know is that caffeine stays in your body for a very long time, particularly if you're a slow metabolizer. And we can talk a little bit about how you know if you're a slow metabolizer or not. But the best way to know is if you're a person who drinks a cup of coffee like me, and your body responds with like palpitations or agitation, or the effects of caffeine runs into the late night, then you're probably a slow metabolizer. If you're a person who can drink cappuccino at 10 o'clock and then lay down and go straight to bed, you're probably a fast metabolizer. But on average, it takes about 10 hours for you to get that caffeine out of your system. So if you're having caffeine too late in the day and you're a slow metabolizer, then obviously that can impact your sleep. And caffeine can impact your deep sleep. So this is why I was showing you guys the difference between deep sleep and REM sleep, and understanding how each of those can impact your how you feel the next morning. So again, that deep sleep helps with muscle repair. It helps with growth, and so when you're depleting yourself of that deep sleep, can have serious uh, effects. And it also can cause nighttime waking. So even if you don't have a problem going to sleep, it can cause you to wake up in the middle of the night. So let's talk a little bit about alcohol, which is also another stimulant drug. We don't think about it as a drug because it's socially acceptable, but the impact it has on our body is no different than other stimulants. So it sedates your brain. So oftentimes people think that, oh, alcohol helps me sleep. But because of its impact on your sympathetic nervous system, which is your sort of fight or flight nervous system, it can cause sleep fragmentation, meaning it can disrupt your sleep in the middle of the night. So you may be able to drift off to sleep easier after having alcohol, but being able to get restorative sleep can oftentimes be affected. And so, for many of you guys who have had that issue and wake up in the morning and feel groggy, that hangover, some of that is just from the impact of alcohol in your sympathetic nervous system. It can also affect your mood, so causing depression, anxiety, and stress. So that just sort of goes into that cycle of you drink alcohol, you get more mood depression, and then now you're up late night ruminating and can't get to sleep. And alcohol affects REM sleep. So that dream sleep, remember, that has to do with learning and creativity. So that's one of the reasons why you don't remember a lot of things after you wake up, after you've had a lot of alcohol. It's the reason why you're probably not as productive the following day. You're not as creative, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see how this impacts. And I tell you, if you were to track the way that I do my sleep, you can actually see this. You can actually see one night I drink alcohol and what the impact of that is later in my sleep. We talked about temperature. Your core body temperature has to drop for you to be able to go to sleep. This is one of the reasons why taking a hot bath actually helps, because what it does is that when you take that hot bath, you are warming your extremities. And when you get out of the bath, your that warmth leaves your core and goes out to your extremities, into your hands and your feet. So your core drops temperature while your hands and feet stay up slightly warmer. And that actually stimulate sleep, believe it or not. Even just drinking something hot in the morning. So one of the reasons people like coffee is because it makes them feel like they get that burst of energy. But really, just drinking something warm and warming that core temperature will also raise your core body temperature and make you more energetic and awake. And so, if you're a person who likes coffee, but you don't want some of the adverse effects of coffee, then you may consider drinking something else that's warm. Now, there are some real benefits to drinking coffee, so I don't want to suggest that you should stop drinking coffee at um, completely, but timing is really what matters, and understanding what type of metabolizer you are is important. And mental health and stress, I would say, is probably one of the has the biggest impact on your sleep. So obviously, if you're doing things that are really stimulating at night, things that make you anxious, things that cause you stress, like paying bills or getting into arguments or watching the news, if you're doing any of those activities right before bedtime, obviously you're going to go to sleep with a lot on your mind, and that can impact your sleep. So I do want to talk about sleep and weight. We'll do that in another video, but I'm hoping that this video has helped you understand why we sleep, what impacts our sleep. And in the next few videos, we're going to talk about not only sleep and weight, but then we're going to talk about some things that you can do to help with your sleep. So I will see you guys in the next video.